Hello, and welcome to another episode of TacoBytes, your daily bite of Degen, episode number 433.2. SBF trial. SBF Sam Bankman-Fried takes the stand today. A little bit of drama around that as the jury was excused after lunch because the defense wanted to go over a specific type of evidence that they wanted admitted from Sam's testimony. The prosecution was against it, and so we got to see a little bit of action from directly of what cross from the prosecution would look like as the prosecution got to go directly up against SBF and sort of take him on and ask a lot of hard questions. There was a lot of leeway given by the judge due to the fact that he said it had been a very, very long time since he'd held a special hearing like this. We had originally talked about it happening tomorrow, either the jury being excused early, but the defense went through two of their witnesses early this morning, and so we moved straight into this hearing. The jury was dismissed. And first, the prosecution or the defense went against Sam, talked everything about communication terms that they used, the tools, Slack, Telegram, Signal, the differences of those multi-layers of security of that, why that was. Some of the things got pushed a lot onto Dan Friedberg, attorney for SBF from Fenwick and West. And so one of the things that Dan drafted supposedly was document retention policy. And he was asked, after enacted, do you work to follow it? Yes. Including some of the signal channels. Sam also mentioned Brett Harrison, Rob, and some other people that gave him direction on this, including when it came to setting up North Dimension, and that it was opened by Dan, yet Sam is the one that signed off on it. And North Dimension was eventually used as the processing agent for people sending in money directly to FTX. And so that was one of the ways. And the reason why that might have been set up was because Alameda was having issues with getting some customer deposits because they were, their full title was crypto hedge fund, and some banks at the time were going against that. So North Dimension was set up for that. One of the things that they talked about was mixed custody of funds, omnibus wallets, and Block Explorer. The judge sort of had a couple questions towards him, but on that, and the defense moved through SBF's explanation for certain events rather quickly. Real quick before we continue, just want to shout out to everyone joining us on Unlonely, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, Telegram, and Twitch and Discord. Unfortunately, I'm not able to react to comments, but I will get to them later. Just wanted to shout out to everyone, including over on Rumble. We did. Then the prosecution sort of got to have a go at Sam on cross, and they sort of went a little hard. Talking about, did you talk with lawyers about Signal? He was saying yes. About auto deletion, and a lot of testimony and conversation was around the data retention policy that cannot seem to be found anywhere. That did, and I'll get to that in a second as well. Some of the scope of the policy, Sam was very vague in all of his answers. Didn't really remember anything or remembering having conversations with anyone or how that might have gone, or what was even in the document. One of the things that he was like trying to then explain to the prosecution was like, oh, I'll help. I'm happy to like deep dive deeper into this, and Judge Kaplan, when he is getting burnt out on evasiveness, he tends to come out with smarter comments. And he was asking if, when Sam asked if he would deep dive into a better explanation, the judge, sort of turned to him and said, "You worry about block explorers." Sam did do a good job of explaining block explorers, so I was happy for that. He then sort of went back and rewrote a lot of the questions and answers. He rolled back a lot of his answers when the prosecution started to paint him into a corner. And he would say, my interpretation of your question was wrong. Let me roll back or, re-answer something. And the prosecution did not go light, talking a lot and, how little did he know or have a say. Because what a lot of this defense piece was on this evidence was whether or not Sam was following advice of attorneys, and if he was doing any wrong by doing so, or if he was bringing, other people down with him, knowing that he was doing things illegally from the get-go. He did sort of push off that document retention was only for finalized documents. One of the questions that the prosecution brought up was, having multiple versions of a balance sheet sent via Signal, whether or not that followed into document retention policies or not. One of the things then that prosecution then sort of asked was, did you ever get subpoenaed for documents, and did your policy sort of expand on that? That is when Sam started to get really fidgety. He had two styles. He had a few different styles today that we got to see. When he first sat down and took the stand, he was sort of anxious in his chair, rocking back and forth till I saw a hand motion from his defense that calmed him down or made him, he was able to control himself and stop. But he did do this one thing where he was getting a nose rub and rubbing his nose, and then his hands would get really awkward because he wouldn't know where to put them right away. One of the things that, he did sort of bring up was a lot of rollbacks of questions to let me better explain myself so I can give deeper explanation to that. And the prosecution really wasn't having it, saying that they were happy with his answer and just to move on. Then that's when, they sort of started, once they got a lot of evasiveness from Sam, that's when they started to really dive into some harder questions around Sam's relationship with his attorneys, or what type of counsel he actually got from them. And so they asked, along the lines of, focusing on North Dimension, even asking why it was called North Dimension or why Alameda had its name of why it was Alameda. Sam, responded back with vagueness. I don't even know why, or I didn't have a say in that. And so one of his answers was when he was the CEO of Alameda and the creation of North Dimension, he said that I was not always informed. And so one of the things was, what else did you talk with Dan Friedberg about? And was there any U.S.-based North Dimension accounts that he was aware of? And he was like, he did admit that he did start to ask questions about North Dimension when he saw a U.S.-based account pop up. And he was then a lot of conversations about, from the prosecution, asking what did he talk to attorneys about, what type of advice did he get or ask for clarity on. A lot of it was vagueness of, I don't recall, I don't necessarily understand the scope of the question. A lot of, I'm not entirely sure. There was even a note where the paperwork that signed bringing North Dimension into creation, or the bank account for it, that there's a possibility it was even signed 2 years after the creation of the bank account. So this is when the vagueness sort of really got to the prosecution and started to ask a lot of hard questions that started to draw objections from Sam's defense. did you have any conversations with attorneys about using customer funds to deposit into Alameda? He responded, I don't recall any conversations. And then there was any prior to November 2022, do you recall talking to attorneys about Alameda spending FTX customer funds? That is when they pushed in Exhibit 245. This was not an exhibit we got to see. It was a paper document that the prosecution handed to Sam. And what was really interesting was how anxious it made Sam. You could see him shaking, and he was like, I think I recognize this, but this wasn't, nothing that we created. So I don't necessarily, I think it was a document, retention policy. I'm not quite sure because it was not published to anyone else. And then one of the things that he sort of talked about was the different sections within the terms and services that gave him explicit access and use of customer funds. Sam said that it was described in the lien section, and so they broke into that in 8.2.6 A, B, and C in the digital assets terms and services, where specifically the prosecution had him read, where it specifically said, in under no way, shape, or form will FTX take or commingle FTX funds with customer funds or spend them or take them. So one of the things that hard questions that the prosecution started to throw at Sam, is there any lawyer that said this agreement allowed Alameda to spend FTX customer funds? And was this disclosed to the public? Did you have any specific conversations about allowing or exempt Alameda having allowed negative or exempt from auto liquidations? And Sam sort of got into the I don't know, I wasn't fully involved, I was not the CEO of Alameda, really pushing it off onto both Dan Friedberg and Ryan Mara, if I remember right. One of the big questions was that he got sort of caught up on by the prosecution was about any special privileges that Alameda might have had. And he said that he was aware that there were some speed bumps put in place. And then when asked about what kind of speed bumps, was not able to answer any of that. He responded back with, I had conversations with Caroline Ellison and multiple objections from the defense. There was a very funny point where, was he, trying to ask directly, were you aware of the allowed negative by name? And the way he would then respond was very vague. And the judge sort of just turned it and was literally quoted as saying, you have an interesting way of answering questions. So the judge was sort of running thin on this, as we were also running over on time. Court didn't get out till about 5:30 is when we got about 5:30 normally instead of 4 o'clock. And so one of the things then, prosecution, they sort of just pulled the guns out and started shooting with objection after objection from the defense based on their questions. What policy did you believe allowed Alameda to use FTX customer funds in May 2022? Sam did say he thought it was the futures part of the contract. And then, talking about in general context using off-chain funds for on-chain things. And was then sort of sidetracked, asking about what attorneys he had these conversations with. And he said that he had a conversation with Nick, who had described a conversation with Three Arrows Capital. This was one of those things where the prosecution sort of slammed him because they were like, we've been asking who you've been having attorney questions with, conversations with attorneys, as that is the scope of the allowance, because it's based off of him getting advice and direction from attorneys, namely Dan Friedberg. Then they sort of went in about the investments. Why were the investments not straight from Alameda? Or at times, when did you not want Alameda to be the investor? One of the big questions they asked was with concerning the Binance deal as well. Binance was structured with personal loans that was then to Sam, who made a new company, which then gave those shares back over to Alameda. And the same thing happened with Robinhood as well. Did you have conversations with other CEOs of other exchanges about using customer funds from omnibus wallets? Did you have conversations with other CEOs of other exchanges about using customer funds? And a lot of questions. There was about 6 questions in a row, or 3 questions in a row about conversations with other CEOs of exchanges and using customer funds in some various form or another, with a lot of objections. Then it got into some hard questions concerning Dan Friedberg and whether or not he was competent counsel, and if Sam specifically sought him because he didn't, because he knew that he had loose decision-making skills. Let's call it that. Asking him about if he knew about Dan Friedberg being tied with insider trading scandals or criminal scandals as well. These were all followed by objections from the defense. Then followed by, this is when the prosecution pulled out the bazookas. Did they know about Dan Friedberg using illegal drugs with other FTX employees? And then some sort of situation with another counsel, Bailey Corwell. Based off of the direction that the prosecution was going, I felt that it was leaning towards some illicit behaviors, most likely on the behalf of Dan Friedberg. And the judge sort of ran out of steam on letting the prosecution have free range with that. During that time, they then sort of closed everything down. The judge, excused Sam from the stand. The judge then gave both the defense and prosecution a chance to just sort of give a quick argument for why the evidence that the defense wants to introduce via Sam and some of Sam's testimony, and it's the same testimony that the prosecution is attempting to stop from happening, that the judge ended up saying that he'll be ruling on it tomorrow morning, that he wasn't able to get a complete answer. And so we will see how that goes tomorrow. Jury will be coming in at 9:30. As SBF will be taking the stand first thing in the morning. We expect it to be a circus like it was this morning. So we will be at court bright and early at 3:30 a.m. to make sure we're able to get inside the main courtroom again. There was about 60 people here today, where normally so far it has been in like the 30s to 40s, if that, at times, depending on who's testifying. So that is it for the day. One of the things that I sort of saw a lot with the prosecution is they were sort of really putting Sam on the spot around competency and whether or not he had the data retention policy, and whether or not Signal was used for covering tracks, versus Sam trying to say that he had conversations but couldn't really remember with what attorneys or what those conversations or outcomes of those conversations were, that made him think that using Signal and using auto delete features was a good practice. One of the good lines from the prosecution was around the spreadsheets for investors that Caroline Ellison had sent. So they said that using Signal and auto deleting 7 variations of a spreadsheet to send to investors, which then was the same exact spreadsheet that was sent to investors, was that actual final company documents, or was that just generalized conversations? Sam has been trying to say that it was generalized conversations that were getting deleted and not actual business documents or business conversations. The prosecution shot a ton of holes in that, and we'll be excited to sort of see how this turns out tomorrow. So, as always, I want to thank everyone for joining us all across the board. For those joining us on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Telegram, LinkedIn, Unlonely, and Rumble. thank you all and have a great night. And as always, we end every stream with the same thing. A closed mouth cannot be fed, and you cannot feed a closed mouth. Means that if no one knows you're looking for opportunity can never come a knocking. If opportunity does come a knocking, and no one answers, it's going to keep on walking. We did have an amazing conversation today. Did a great interview with CoinDesk that should be coming out on the CoinDesk podcast in the next couple days. So that will be really fun. And because I told everyone I would apologize in advance talking about it, your favorite Degen, aka me, did make the front page of the New York Times on Sunday. So we will see you all, and as always, we end with the greatest, worst knock knock joke on the face of the planet, and that is knock knock.